So you have started your new business. You have gone to the Secretary of State's office of your state and formed, you have registered your LLC. But let me just tell you this. The protections that come along with your LLC status will be at risk if you do these three things. Stick around. Hey out there, welcome to Wedding Industry Law. My name is Rob. I am an attorney representing wedding industry professionals, and in this video, we're going to be talking about three things that could jeopardize you, that could jeopardize the protections that come along with forming a limited liability company. Now, as we've talked about in previous episodes, the concept of the limited liability company, the concept of incorporating, is to keep your personal stuff, your Beanie Babies, your Xbox, your house, your Toyota Camry, all of that separate from the assets of your business, your camera, your turntables, your computer, your laptop, whatever the case is. So personal stuff separate from business stuff to the extent that your business owes someone money or is liable to someone, that someone can only get the business assets, not your personal assets. That's essentially the idea behind having an LLC, for the most part, is protecting the owner's stuff from the stuff of the business. Okay, fine, we get it. Good job, Rob. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about three ways that someone can quote unquote pierce the corporate veil or kind of rip up your LLC and still come after your Beanie Babies, your Xbox, your Toyota Camry. These things done habitually could lead to that result. So we want to avoid them if we possibly can. And there's three of them we're going to be talking about. The first thing we want to avoid is what's called commingling of funds. So the safest thing for a single member LLC to do is to have a bank account for the business that is actually separate and apart from the personal business account of the single member owner. So for me, for my example, I have a bank account that's Rob Schenk, and then I have a bank account that is Wedding Industry Law, for example. And so that way, if Wedding Industry Law or your company makes money, that money goes into the business account and not your personal account. So as soon as you are able to go to a financial institution and open a business bank account, the safer you are, the safer your LLC status will be, because to the extent that your personal stuff, your bank account, your personal bank account is intermingled with your business money, your business assets, then there is an argument that the LLC doesn't really exist and that it is just what's called an alter ego of you as the owner. So making sure to the greatest extent possible, your business account is separate from your personal account. That's number one. The number two thing to avoid in order to keep your LLC status is to actually keep your finances actually separate. You've already formed a separate bank account for your business. Now the chore is to actually keep those assets from intermingling even within those two bank accounts. And what I mean by that, an example of this is oftentimes when I started my first law firm, and I probably shouldn't be saying this over the internet, but my personal account might be super low. And so I'm just buying all kinds of stuff with my business account. I'm like, oh, I'll just figure it out later, right? So the argument is that the more often that you're buying personal stuff that is not business related, the more often that you're doing that is not some type of something that can be deducted as a business expense, not something that can be put into a bucket for personal draws or anything like that. The more often that you are doing that, the stronger the argument is that there is no difference in the finances, that the money that the business makes is actually yours because you're not going through the formalities of transferring money from the business account to the personal account, and you're therefore not keeping these things separate, and your business is essentially an alter ego, is what we would call that. So I'm not saying that, you can't buy a stick of gum with your business account. I'm not saying that you can't make purchases with your business account that are personal related. What I'm saying is that, number one, do the best you can to account for that. Number two is, if that becomes habitual to the point where it would take a forensic accountant scientist to figure out the differences between what's going on in your personal versus your business, because they're so much the same, or everything is in the business, the more likely it is that someone is going to be successful at piercing the corporate veil. Now, will they be successful? I don't know. Every case is different. Every state is different. Every jurisdiction is different with the level of commingling there has to be evidence of in order to pierce the corporate veil. So my broad recommendation is just do the best you can to go through the formalities of, okay, my business made money. Now I'm actually going to pay myself by whatever means, whether it's a paycheck or a draw or whatever it is that will actually go into my personal account. And then I buy my personal crap for my personal account, not everything from the business account. So as much as you can do that, the less likely it is that somebody's going to be able to pierce the corporate veil for that particular reason. The third way that your LLC status can be at risk for a single member's LLC is to let your registration expire. In almost every state, you have to continually, on an annual basis, pay the coffers of the government to keep your LLC status, your LLC registration alive. In other words, just because you registered it doesn't mean that you're done. There's always going to be, or most often always going to be, an annual fee or annual registration fee that you pay to keep the LLC alive. So if you miss that, you'll probably get a letter in the mail or an email. If you miss that, then you're going to be on some type of probationary status, probably depending on what state you're in. And if you miss that, then what happens is typically the Secretary of State of the state that you're in is going to do what's called administratively dissolve your LLC. And that means that essentially at that point, your LLC status is either void or it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to use the protections of the LLC from that point forward. So the number three thing is keeping your registration up to date, making sure that you're paying the annual fees as they come around and not getting dissolved. But that's not to say that you can't rescue yourself from dissolution. That happens sometimes if you're not paying attention. What happens is that you go ahead and become, follow the steps. There are typically always in every state, there's typically steps that you can take if you've been administratively dissolved to pay the fees to open it back up and once again receive the benefits of having an LLC. So again, opening a separate bank account, making sure those bank accounts don't commingle funds to the greatest extent that you can. And number three, making sure that you're up to date on your fees that go to the Secretary of State of the state that you're in order to keep the LLC status going. These are the three things that you're going to want to do in order to keep the LLC going. I hope that you found this episode enjoyable. I apologize about the Spartan nature of my background. I am in the process of moving, so that is why everything seems kind of like I'm in a prison cell. But at any rate, I mean, if you're listening to this, maybe you can't see it. So if you are listening to it, I'm on a beach somewhere in Hawaii. New videos every week, all about wedding industry law. If you have a suggestion or a comment about what we're talking about, please be sure to leave a comment in the comment section below. New episodes every Wednesday. What? New episodes every Monday. Maybe Wednesday at some point. But new episodes definitely every Monday. And with that, folks, we'll see you next time.